following is not legal advice coming from an attorney. Nothing more than a father speaking from his own experience. Should you need actual legal advice, contact an attorney.
It's time for another episode of The Father's Truth. The show where real men band together, stand up for fathers' rights, and bring the father's truth out of the darkness, and into the light. Giving fathers a voice everywhere. A broadcast brought to you by the Fathers Lives Matter Network. Here's your host, Alan Donovan.
Good morning, guys. Ricky, Telly, Slime, DeLife, Miss Roddens. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Vito, welcome. Black Male Pride. Hey, brother, how's it going? Samantha Stanley. So I wanted to welcome you guys to the second live cast of Fathers Lives Matter. This morning, I'm going to have a guest on, Akvisual from Sweden. He's an avid outdoorsman, snowboarder, who moved to Sweden, was living his dream, and then it all came crashing down. He is now fighting for custody of his 5-year-old over there in the Swedish family court system. So we're going to talk to him and kind of find out a little bit about what's going on with this story and how things are different over there. So give me 1 second here to bring him in. All right, we're just waiting on AK to come on in. Buddy.
Yo.
Good morning. How you doing?
All right.
I guess good evening to you.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Let me get this thing kind of dialed in here. All right. Yeah, I think we're good.
All righty. All right. Well, Aaron, thank you for joining us this morning.
Absolutely.
So, why don't we just start off with, so you're an American citizen, right?
Yes.
How did you end up over in Sweden?
So, in 2014, I reconnected with an old friend. I kind of at that time had a thing for her for a while. Anyhow, we reconnected, and I moved here to be with her. And shortly after that, she got pregnant, and yeah, and the rest is history. Yeah.
So now, were you guys ever married?
No, we were never married, and never married, and we had been together maybe, I'd say, about a year, a little over a year, before, like, a year and a half, when everything went to hell.
Yeah, when everything kind of fell apart.
Yep.
Okay, so what was the first thing that happened? I mean, did you, like, say, come home one day and told you, hey, we're done, or how did it play out exactly?
So basically what happened was she ended up getting a hold of my telephone, and while I was asleep, and went through my phone, went through all my email, my Facebook, Instagram, everything. And she said that I had been cheating on her with people in the U.S. as I'm living in Sweden. And mind you, she's 7 months pregnant at this point. And said that I was cheating on her because I was still friends with some of my ex-girlfriends. Which isn't a big deal, like, you know.
Yeah.
Still friends with them. They're friends on Facebook. It's not like we talk every day or anything. But she equated that to cheating. She was 7 months pregnant with our son, and her other son, his dad apparently had cheated on her while she was pregnant.
Okay.
So there was like this sort of pattern.
So you already had that mindset going on that because he did it, you were going to do it.
Exactly. So she swore I was cheating, kept telling me that she was going to leave me and that she would take our son, etc. But she would also tell me that she would never take him from me, never keep him from me. And, yeah, that went on. And then she had our son, and it was a really hard birth. She ended up losing like pints of blood, and she almost died. He almost died, but everything ended up being okay. I was alone with him for the first couple days because she was so out of it, and and she was also at that time, she was accusing me of being an alcoholic, which I wasn't. And one day in particular at the hospital, I had brought her son with me to go and see her and go see his new little brother. And she kept asking him, did Aaron have beer today? Did Aaron have beer? Did Aaron have beer? No. And then finally he said yes. So she basically pushed him into it. All the while she's doped up on severe pain medication. And so she accused me of driving drunk with her son.
Oh, wow.
I told her, we're at the hospital. Let's get me a blood test right now. Let's do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anyhow, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't.
Why?
Because they said I had to go through the there's like a special part of the hospital you go to get blood drawn, and I said there's nobody there right now, so you can't do it. Which I thought was weird. I was like, all right, whatever. She's going back to sleep, so this will all be fine. Anyhow, long story short, she kept threatening me, telling me every single thing. If I had any arguments or qualms with her whatsoever, she called it abuse. She would start picking at me in front of the kids and like getting on my ass, and I'd be like, hey, enough. You know, and she'd be like, that's abuse. You can't do that. You can't say that. Even stuff like her son, he had some difficulties, and he would be quite violent sometimes. Like one time, for instance, we're sitting at the dinner table, and he just straight up stabs me with a fork.
Oh, holy shit.
So I snatched the fork out of his hand and said, no, you can't do that. Like, that's not nice. You don't do that to people, you know? Well, she said that was abuse. And that you cannot tell children that they're not allowed to do things. So
wow.
Also doesn't teach them that you should say please or thank you. So
now let's back up for a second. Before all this was going on, or she got pregnant, I mean, was she normal, so to speak?
Yeah, but the weird thing is like the stuff I'm talking about now, that's when I noticed things were kind of off, because her son, he would just be doing like horrendous things, or he would throw these tantrums and be like having 2 fistfuls of her hair and go into these like terror, rage filled, like screaming and screaming and crying like for hours.
Oh wow.
If he didn't get his way, you know, if he couldn't have something he wanted, or if he didn't want to leave somewhere, he would get violent and kicking, hitting, spitting on you, all kinds of stuff.
Now, how old was her other boy?
He was 5 years old at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 years old at the time, I think. Yeah, and when I knew things were really kind of out of hand was one day he had taken a blue permanent marker and drawn all over the walls. And being a little kid, he writes his 3s backwards and things like that. And I said, hey, buddy, did you get a little artsy today? Did you draw on the walls? She's like, how dare you ask him that? That's abuse. You can't force him to tell you anything. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm just asking him. And she finally ended up saying, you don't know. You probably did it, and you're trying to blame it on him. And I'm like, really? I colored all over the walls.
Holy cow.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. So it was after that I kind of knew things were gonna be challenging.
Yeah.
So, and they definitely were. So
Now, at that point, did you kind of decide that maybe this wasn't such a good idea? You know, maybe we're going to do a trial separation or something like that, or did she just like end it all together?
No, I wanted to stick together and work through it, and because I was like, okay, we have some differences of opinion with child raising and behavioral stuff, but figured we could get through it, you know, and just kind of stuck with it. And then she got then she got pregnant, and you know, I wasn't raised that way to like, I'm not going to dip out on a pregnant lady, you know, whether she's my wife or not. So we stuck around, and I was excited to have a child, you know, and so that was good, but things very rapidly took a decline, and she ended up calling the police one day because she got trying to get into it with me again with the kids around. And I had this box of orange juice. And I said, enough already. And I put it down on the counter kind of hard, and some of the juice came out. Well, she felt that was grounds for calling the police and telling them I was being abusive. So the police showed up, and we had a conversation for about 45 minutes or so. I did with one of the officers in the backyard. I went back there and sat down. I said, go ahead, call the police. I'll be out back waiting for them.
Yeah.
And I talked to him for about 45 minutes, and he said, well, there's no issue here. Like, there's no problem, but I would recommend that you call the commune, the community, and try to get some help from them. Schedule a meeting, tell them everything you told me. And because she had been telling me that she was going to take my son, and that I would lose all my rights to be a father, and that she had all the rights because she was Swedish and she was a woman. Which I should point out that if you have a child in Sweden and you're not married, the custody goes solely to the mother. 100%.
So you have no rights.
Yeah, and so basically I'm signed as the father, but all that means then is that you have to pay child support. And the government collects that from you every month. They pull it out of your bank account. It says in the law that the child has the right to both parents, and that contact should be maintained unless special circumstances are prevailing or it's not in the best interest of the child, which is what she has been doing for a very long time now. So when you talk to the police, the Swedish police, do they approach the subject with sincerity? Whereas because American police generally will tell you straight up that they can't get involved because it's a legal issue and you have to go to courts. Yeah, this guy that I talked to, he was super cool. I mean, by the end of the conversation, we were laughing and having a good time talking, but they can't really do anything either. You know, we own the home together, so, you know, they can be like, well, you should leave, or do you have anywhere else you can go? And it's like, no, I'm not leaving. This is my house, you know, like I don't need to go anywhere. So, they told me to call the commune, talk to them, so I called up the commune, and I said, hey, I'm having problems with my wife. She's saying that I'm being abusive, and I'm not, and she's threatening to take my son away. And basically what had happened just before that is we went to the, you have to go and you have to sign the papers saying, like, yes, I'm the father, and then custody papers as well. So we go in there, and I signed the father papers, and then the lady's like, okay, do you want to sign the custody papers now? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And my ex said, no, I'm not signing those. Nope. So she wouldn't sign the papers giving me any custody of my son. And I said, can she do that? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, okay. So that really kind of messed me up for a little bit. But anyhow, I called them and said, like, hey, she's going to take my kid, and she's threatening all this stuff and saying she's going to have me put in jail. I need some help. And, okay, this sounds like a serious situation. We're going to get back to you. We're going to call you in 2 hours. Okay. 2 hours comes and goes. They don't call. 4 hours. Next day, I call them back. I'm like, yo, I was supposed to get a call. They're like, oh, that person's not here right now. We'll have them call you back. Another week goes by. Still nothing. I'm calling and calling. I called and have recorded about 250 telephone calls to this place. They refused to speak to me. And then when it's all said and done, I find out that the very first thing they did after I talked to them the first time was they called her immediately. And they set up secret meetings with her.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, exactly. So at this point, things were getting pretty crazy. So I couldn't be at home. I couldn't be at home. And I opted to live in my car for a while, like I had to. So I'm living in my car and I'm going home every now and then to see my son and leaving again. And this is going on for a while. I'm trying to work things out. And I come home one day and she's gone. My son's gone. She took off and went to the west coast of Sweden. It's all the way across the country. Get a hold of her. I'm like, where are you? Where are you with my kid? And she's like, I'm in a safe place. And I knew she was at her parents' house.
Yeah.
I was, please come home. When are you coming home? You know, she's like, I haven't decided if I'm coming home yet. So that went on for a while, and then she did end up coming home, and I'd been living at my place of work because I couldn't be there with her.
Yeah.
Everything I did, everything I said, it was like, if you don't pay me for these bills, that's financial abuse and you can go to prison for that. If you say this or that, that's mental abuse and you'll go to prison for that.
So she was really on this abuse kick, thinking everything is abuse.
Huge. Actually, we had friends over for New Year's one night, and this one guy, one of her coworkers, his kid was acting up, like, and being mean to the other kids. So he told him, like, hey, stop doing that. Like, do you want to be a bully? Do you want to be mean? Like, nobody likes bullies.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's a little kid. He starts crying because he feels bad. And so her and her friend said he went too far, called it abuse, called the police. Police showed up at my house New Year's Eve. You know,
no shit.
He had obviously had a few beers because everyone was staying over at the house, you know.
Yeah.
And the police arrested him, took him away.
Go ahead.
Yeah, police arrested him, took him away, and his ex-wife had to come and pick the kids up.
No shit.
Yeah, he basically lost fucking custody of his kids because of that.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and this friend of hers actually is a police interrogator. So she's got a friend on the inside.
Oh, lovely. The deck is even more stacked, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, moving on down the road, I told her, hey, I'm coming by the house tonight. It was a Friday. It was June 26th, 2015. Coming by the house tonight, and I'm going to hang out with my son for a little bit. Okay, so I go over there, and I'm hanging out with my son, and she's trying to get into it with me, and I'm like, when's this going to fucking end for you? Like, just stop. Like, I'm just here to spend time with him. And so I'm laying in bed with him. This is about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. They come and knock on the door. She says, you're going to want to get that. That's for you. I'm like, why would that be for me? I'm not answering the door. And so I hear her downstairs answer the door. She's whispering. And I go down there, and there's 4 police officers in my house.
Oh, Jesus.
And they're like, you need to come outside and talk to us. And there had been a bag of my things, my clothes and shit that I was collecting. And so they're like, first they're like, you need to leave. You need to leave now. And I'm like, I will leave when I'm ready. I'm going to say bye to my son first, and then I'll go. So I say bye to my son, and I grab my bag to go and leave, like they told me to, and their cars are blocking my car. So I put the bag in the car, and I go back in. I'm like, hey, your car's blocking my car. He told me to leave. They're like, no, you need to hang around for a minute. Let's talk outside. And they had me wait, and this guy, he was a real jerk. So they had me wait, and then come out, and they're talking Swedish, and I'm like, hey, I need to know what's going on. I don't speak Swedish. And two officers grab my arms, two female officers grab my arms, and say, you're under arrest for the suspicion of rape.
What?
Yeah, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Put me in the car. I'm obviously freaking out. I'm crying. I'm super upset. Like, I'm not a rapist. I was just seeing my son. Like, what the fuck is going on? They take me to the police station. I had to piss really bad. They wouldn't let me piss. They take me into this room, and there's about 10 officers standing around, and they say, okay, take off all your clothes. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Take off all your clothes now. So they made me strip naked in front of female officers as well.
Yeah.
The doctor comes in, takes Q-tips, rubbing them everywhere, doing a rape kit, my mouth, my penis, everywhere. And then they give me these prison clothes to put on. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And this was Friday night. They stuck me in a solitary confinement cell and said, okay, well, the next time you'll hear anything is going to be at least Monday. So I actually spent a week in this facility till I was actually seen. I was actually interrogated and interviewed without my lawyer present a number of times.
Holy shit.
They would not let me call my work. They would not let me call my family. I had no contact with the outside world. No television, no radio, nothing like that.
So they just basically completely removed you from everything.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They just pulled you right off the grid. It's like you didn't exist at this point.
Exactly. And then from there, they took me and they took me to a place called Haktet. That's like the pre-trial facility or something like that. Again, solitary confinement. Not allowed to speak to anybody. Only my lawyer. And teeny tiny room. And I ended up being there for about 2 months. Because in summertime here, everything shuts down. So basically the courts were shut down, and then the leading prosecutor had gone on vacation, and then one of the judges went on vacation.
You're stuck there hanging out, waiting.
Yeah, so I'm stuck, just like cranking out thousands of push-ups every day, and like trying to sleep, because there's dudes in there just like wailing and screaming at night, and there's like fingernail marks on the walls and shit. It's just an awful place, dude. Got a half hour outside every day, and outside is basically a concrete box that's about 20 feet tall with a cage on the top of it.
Jesus.
Yeah. So I'm there for like 2 months, and they wouldn't let the first little hearing that I had, they wouldn't let me go because she said that I was going to kidnap my son and that I would try to take him to the United States. So they thought I was a flight risk. So they wouldn't let me out. But after about 2 months, they come to during this time, I should mention, they're sending people to talk to me, asking me, what kind of job would you like to do while you're in prison?
So they're already getting you squared away for a long-term kind of thing.
Yeah. They're saying a minimum of 2 years.
Holy shit.
And they're asking me what kind of work I want to do or if I want to take any college classes. I'm like, I'm not filling this out because I don't plan on being here that long.
So, with you being a U.S. citizen, didn't you have any kind of access to a U.S. consul or anything like that?
They would not let me call the embassy. They would not let me call. Yep, they would not let me call anybody. The only time I got to make a phone call, and I was only allowed to call someone from Sweden, so I called my boss at work. And when I called him, they had 3 detectives in the room and a prosecutor in the room. Well, I had
Just listening to your call.
Yeah, and they said I was not allowed to mention her name or anything to do with any of it. So, anyhow, they come to my cell one day, and they're like, hey, get your stuff together. And I'm like, what stuff? I don't have any stuff. And I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, you're leaving. I'm like, what do you mean I'm leaving? They're like, oh, we don't know. So, go out front, and they're like, yep, you're being released. I'm like, okay, do you know why? Do you know what's going on? Nope, we don't know anything. Here's a bus ticket. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. So I go from being in solitary confinement for 2 months to having to get on one of the busiest train systems in the world, and just shitloads of people around, and I beelined it straight to my work. And they were like, whoa, what the hell are you doing here? You know? Come to find out, they had dropped the case. What had happened is in that bag I told you about I put in my car.
Yeah.
She was saying that I ripped her panties off of her. Well, inside that bag, they found a pair of panties. But they weren't ripped. They were cut with something because they sent it up to their forensics lab. And when they found out that they were cut. So she planted those there.
Holy shit.
Planted them there. So they released me. She obviously tries to appeal it. It went to the highest court in Sweden, like the Supreme Court, basically, and they dropped everything as well. So she can't appeal it again. She can't come after me for that again. But it fucked my life up, big time.
Oh God, I can only imagine. Now, did you lose your job or anything like that? Or
no, my job. They've always been super great, and they've stood behind me and supported me, and yeah, they've been so good to me. But the thing that's messed up is I lost a lot of friends over this, and I lost. She basically withheld my mail from me. My boss was trying to get it. Oh, there's no mail. So I got sent to what they call the Kronofogden here. It's kind of like the country's bill collection agency.
okay,
And they will mess you up. Like, if you don't pay, like if you owe $1 and you don't pay it, I mean, they'll take your license away. They do all kinds of stuff. They'll come
so
to your
basically it's like a collection agency on steroids to them.
Yeah, they'll like come to your house and take your shit. Anyhow, I got 12 marks at the Kronofogden, and it's supposed to take around 8 years to get one of those marks removed. And if you have them on, you can't get loans, nothing. So I get out of that place. I'm a mess, dude. I'm a total mess. And the other thing is they made me, they're like, well, if you're going to leave today, you have to sign this restraining order. Kontaktförbud is what it's called here. It means you can't contact her or anything for 6 months, and she can't contact you. So I'm like, shit, yeah, I'll sign it. Like, I don't want to contact her. But in doing that, in getting out, it apparently that thing stays on your record, which really sucks. And I've been trying to get it removed, but it's proving to be very difficult.
Now, is there any way that you can get it removed, or is it just something that's going to ride there with you forever?
It's a long process, but I'm kind of in the middle of that right now. It's a lot of paperwork and talking to the right people. So, but yeah, I got out of there. I hadn't seen my son since June, and it's now September sometime. And yeah, dude, I was a wreck. And being a wreck, and then I had about $30,000 in my bank account because she sold our house while I was locked up. So being a wreck as I was with that much money is not a good idea.
Yeah.
You know, I was just found a little apartment to live in with one of my coworkers, and was staying there, and yeah, I ended up meeting this girl, this wonderful woman who I ended up marrying, and she basically pulled me out of that, all that. She got all those marks from the chronophobe taken away. She helped me get my debt totally cleared up, which, all in all, I mean, just for her sending me to jail like that, it cost me around $100,000.
Holy shit.
Yep. Because if you don't pay bills, they add on the late fees and then keep adding.
They just keep adding up. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow, and I lost money on the house, etc., etc. Lost money from not working. Anyhow, she got me out of all that. And so me and my wife were together. We hadn't been married yet at this point. And my ex decides to sue me. So while I was locked up, she had bought a bunch of things for the house and then sued me for the cost of those things. Yeah.
How exactly did that work? I mean...
Well, so going to court, and I hadn't seen my son in about 19 months at this point. No contact with him at all. No photos, nothing. And the judge said she didn't even show up to court. She sent her lawyer, and she didn't even come. And the judge said, this is completely ridiculous and unfair, and you should not have to pay this money. But
absolutely not.
Yeah, he said, but unfortunately, the law states, since you both co-own that home and your name's on there as well as hers, anything that's purchased for the home, you guys have to split 50-50. But he said, but what I am going to do, he said, unfortunately, you're going to have to pay something. But what I am going to do is I'm going to remove about half of this. And he told her lawyer, never again, for all of eternity, will you ever come after him for anything financial ever again, no matter what. And he said, and you better advise your client to start the visitation process with his son immediately. And it was only then that she would work with the social services. And then it was about another 5 or 6 months before I actually got to see him.
Jesus, man.
So, yeah, that kind of like messed everything up. Now, meanwhile, while this is going on, she's contacting every single person that I know who is a female on social media, and some dudes too, everybody, and writing these long drawn-out letters saying I'm a drug addict and alcoholic, that I'm this vicious, abusive monster, and that I'm a threat to society, that I'm weapon obsessed, and just all. She compared me to Joseph Fritzl. You know who that is?
I don't.
He's that creepy Austrian dude who kept his daughter locked in the walls of their basement, and he had like 4 or 5 kids with her.
Holy shit.
Had her locked in there for like 20 years or something. Yeah, she's comparing me to a dude who can do something like that. Telling all my friends this, starting Facebook groups, etc. And in that process, actually invited my wife to this group as well.
No shit.
And my wife's like, hey, this is fratol here, which is basically slander. It's illegal, and you better stop this. So once she found out who my wife was, she started harassing her. So my wife would get these messages, text messages in the middle of the night with like fake dating profiles and things like that, saying, we're both sleeping with the same guy at the same time. That's kind of sick. And, you know, the first few times this happened, of course, my wife freaked the fuck out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't you see? It's her. Like, it's her.
Yeah.
And then finally she figured it out. You know, and we would get these calls, these hang-up calls in the middle of the night, and she would get all these, like, super messed up messages. I got one time, like, saying how I shouldn't have married a crack whore, and just saying all kinds of awful shit about my wife, like horrible, horrible things. And it went so far as to even, she called. One day my wife gets a call from the social services, and they're like, hey, we need to have a talk. You need to come down. And she's like, what? And she's like, they said, we've been informed that there's a violent, abusive behavior going on in your home with your daughter there. My wife's like, this is news to me. So they're like, well, we have to investigate. So we had just bought our house we live in now. They said that I wasn't allowed to be in my home for at least 4 months while they investigated what was going on. And they wanted to bring her daughter in for an interview, etc., etc. The funny thing was, is as soon as they called her to get her to come in for this interview, my ex starts messaging her on Facebook saying, oh, I've heard, because what they do is, since there was a report made by an anonymous person, since I have a son with her, they also call her and tell her that there's been a report made. But the thing is that she made this report.
Yeah.
She made this report. She had to have, because there was nothing going on. So now my wife at that time was at risk of losing her daughter. And she's going crazy, you know. She's upset with me. She's upset with her, you know, and it's not fair. She should never have to deal with this. And, you know, finally it was just like, she told them, like, hey, there's nothing going on, and you're not taking my kid from me. And my husband will be staying at home. And so they're like, oh, okay. I called to talk. They're like, we can't talk to you about it. I said, no, but I got some things to say, and you're going to listen. You know? Yeah. So I told them about all this stuff that was going on. And then a couple days later, they dropped the whole thing, let it go. I've filed so many police reports. My wife has too. The police never do anything about it. It never goes anywhere. And I'm assuming that's because she has her little friends in the police department.
On the inside. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at this point, too, just before that, like the restraining order had been lifted. And so I gave her a call one day, and I said, hey, I just wanted to call and ask how my son was, and if I could send him some birthday presents. She said, yeah, that's fine, he's good. I said, okay, bye. That was it. Very next day, I get a call. Is this Aaron? Yep, this is Aaron. You need to come down to this police station at this place, and we need to have a talk. I'm like, about what? Well, I'm not telling you. I said, all right, dude, well, I'm not coming down then. And he said, well, we'll put out a warrant and we'll send people to come find you. And I said, do whatever you got to do, but unless you tell me what I'm coming down there for, no way. So finally, he called back 2 more times, and I was just like, dude, I already gave you my answer. And so then this lady calls me, and she's like, oh, it's about the contact ban, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, sure, yeah, I'll come down now that I know what it's about. She had called the police and told them I broke the contact ban, even though I didn't, because I called and asked to send birthday presents to my son. They interrogated me for 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours, and they only let me go because my wife was out in the waiting room. I told her, like, you can't let them take me. Like, you got to do everything you can. And I guess for two of those 3 hours, she went completely ballistic on these people in there. And then they finally, like, we got to get her out of here, so let him go, you know? So they let me go. And, yeah, I mean, the harassment it hasn't stopped. So
it sounds like it's gotten worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty bad. And the other thing that she went and did, I'll tell you that part later. I don't want to say it on here because it might ruffle some things. But Anyway, yeah, it drove my wife so insanely, like, she was just emotionally, mentally destroyed from all this stuff. And having helped me, because every other day it's like a new problem that pops up. Or she's getting a message saying that I'm screwing around on her, like, or she's being called ugly and like crack whore and like being called a slut and all these other things. It broke her. It broke her, man. She had to take time off of work and like,
Yeah.
you know, she couldn't do it anymore. And but again, my wife was the one who was instrumental in getting me a visitation with my son. So I see him once a month for 2 hours. I drive about 600 kilometers each way to go and see him. So over 1,000 kilometers once a month to see him for 2 hours. The very first visit, they said, we're going to let him decide the time, meaning my son.
Yeah.
You know, he was like 3 years old at the time, you know?
Oh, Jesus.
First visit, I think he said grandpa, like, he said, where's grandpa? Like, one time. And they're like, all right, visit's done. Visit's over. I'm like, what? It was 20 minutes.
Wow.
20 minutes for the first visit, and every single visit, they wouldn't let me come through the front of the building. I had to enter through a side door of the building, so no one would see me. I go in there. I'm told I'm not allowed to take any photos of my son. I'm not allowed to give him any kind of treats or candy or anything like that. And I have to do an alcohol breath test every time I go there. And somebody's sitting in the visit with us, like, up my ass the whole time while I'm trying to spend time with my son, you know? So, for over 2 years now, I've never missed a visit. I've consistently asked for more time. I've shown up every time without fail. I've never missed a child support payment. I've shown up before and he hasn't been there. And they're like, oh, sorry, we changed the days. Nobody told you? Like,
Gee.
yeah. Or I showed up another time, oh, so-and-so's sick, so there's nobody here to do your visit. I'm like, you people realize how far I have to drive and that I miss work? Like, are you going to pay for that time I've lost?
Yeah, they don't care.
No, they don't give a shit. And, you know...
Now, do you also have to pay them for the supervised visits as well?
No, that's through the Swedish government. All that stuff's taken care of, so that's good. But, you know, it's one of these things where they create monsters out of people who aren't monsters. Yeah. And the way that they talk to you, and the wording, and the way that they say things. Well, you know, and they always I always ask for more time, and they're like, yeah, well, we'll have to talk with Erica, or we'll have to talk with his mom about that, because, you know, she's got the control, because she has custody. I even asked, I said, I need to get the journals from our visits, please. Like the notes that they write down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they said, oh, we're going to have to ask her about that. I'm like, why would you have to ask her about that? And they're like, well, that's how it works, because she has sole custody. I'm like, okay. So they ask her, of course. She says no. You know, you can't get those. I tell my lawyer this, and he's like, that's insane. He's like, they're required by law to give those to you. They still won't give them up. And it's just, every time I ask for more time, they're like, yeah, well, we don't know if it's in his best interest, but I just sent the first letters, because how you do it here in Sweden is your lawyer sends a letter to them saying, this is what I want, this is the time that I want with my child, etc., and they have 2 weeks to respond. So she didn't respond in time, but she did respond and came back with, absolutely not. We'll think about giving you 3 hours a month instead of 2. And if you pursue this any further, we have documentation from exes and written and recordings that won't fare well for your client, basically threatening me with stuff. So then you have to, if they refuse to go through that process. And also, I went through the family rights department here. I went through that 3 different times, and basically they contact the other parent and say, hey, let's have a sit down and talk about your child's needs and visitation and stuff. She refused flat out all 3 times. And I should mention that when I was locked up, when I got out, the government actually paid me for taking my freedom away. So,
Really?
Yep, because they unjustly took my freedom because I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But the thing is they should have paid me around $30,000 for the time and money it cost me to be in there. They ended up giving me $6,000. But, and whatever, yeah. It's money I didn't have before, and I needed it.
Yeah.
So they paid me for that. But, so in Sweden, when you send the first letter, they deny it. Then what you have to do, you have to sue them for sole custody. So I have to go in there saying, I want sole custody of my son, and if that doesn't work, then I want I want these days. And I didn't ask for a lot. I asked for 1 weekend a month with him, and every other holiday, and time in the summer. Like 2 weeks in the summer. I don't think that's unreasonable.
No, that is very reasonable.
And so, funny thing about this lady, too, is that I found out, so she would take her son to go see his dad. And she would only do it once a month, once every other month. And she would not meet with him. She would only drop his son off to his son's grandparents. And he would have to hide in the basement and wait till she left. So, and she told me he was a drug addict, told me he was an alcoholic, all these other, same shit she's saying about me. And he barely saw his son for 7 years. And as soon as she started doing all this stuff to me, she started letting her son see his father again.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, it sounds like on a lot of different levels that, she's just a predator.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so you've gone through all this shit, and I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. You followed my page for a long time. Like I told you, you were one of my first followers on my page. And I've talked to you throughout the course of everything, and I had no idea it was this bad.
Oh, dude, I've almost ended it a few times, man, because it gets so fucking hard. It's so hard. And especially being demonized like that and told you're some kind of rapist, lunatic monster, and you're not that person. The only reason I haven't done that is because my wife has fought harder for me than I could ever fought, and has fought harder for me than anybody has ever fought for me. And she's pulled me out of that. And you just gotta keep fighting. Like, it sucks when I see these posts about, these dads who can't take it anymore and they take that way out. It really sucks, but I understand because I know that pain that they're going through, that loss.
Yeah, going through this kind of thing, and granted, my situation was nowhere close to yours at all. But going through it sounds like to me, going through family court, whether it's here in the United States, over in Sweden, wherever the case may be, it's a fucking meat grinder.
Oh, it is, and
it takes your soul.
It's so biased. It's so gender biased, and you know what? Through this whole process, I've gone and I've sought out mental help. Right? I've searched and looked for resources for men in this country to go and get help. They don't exist. They have one place called Man Centrum, and they have an on-call psychologist there. That's there every now and then.
And that's it.
But it's a place where guys go for anger management. You know?
So they can't. So realistically, they can't give you any kind of assistance with what you need, because that sounds like way out of their realm.
I've been told, get out of here. Like, there's no help for you here. I had a cop one time. I called the police and told him I wanted to talk to a detective about this because of all the harassment that was going on. He straight up told me, no, women don't harass men. He said, wow. And you're a man. You're a man. Get over it.
So basically, suck it up and deal with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, there's fucking nothing here. And for me to first start seeing my son too, the conditions were that I had to prove that I was not an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I had to prove that I was seeking out help for my mental illness. So, and sure, I said, okay, I went and did that. And another thing she didn't know is that ever since I got out of prison, I have gotten blood tests to prove that I'm not doing this stuff. I even went through last year, because I knew this stuff was going to come up and I knew it was happening. I put myself through a 6-month alcohol treatment program. I didn't need to be there.
Yeah.
It wasn't inpatient, it was outpatient. I'd just go meet with them once a week and they'd be like, how you doing? I'd be like, I'm fine. They're like, are you drinking? No. Okay. Go down this lab, let them take blood. Okay. Like, for 6 months I did that because I knew I was going to have to prove that shit again and again and again. So if any dudes are listening and you have that same issue coming up, go and get yourself blood tested like once a week. At least once a week. Go and get yourself blood tested, because when she says, oh, he's an alcoholic or he's doing whatever, then you can be like, boom, check it out.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's extremely sad and disheartening that you have to take these kind of steps, because you know that somewhere down the road that shit's going to come up, and you got to have this proof saying, hey, here it is. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a drug addict. Yep. It's bullshit that you got to go through all this just to prove it.
Right.
I mean, it shouldn't be that way.
Well, and the other thing I have to battle is that she's making these claims that I have these exes. So she's been contriving these stories for years. These people, I happen to have a couple girlfriends that we didn't get along too well, and hence that's why we're not together anymore.
Yeah.
One of these girls actually got pregnant with another dude's kid, told me it was mine, let me believe it was mine, then got an abortion. And, she's just like a worthless bag of shit. And now I have to relive stuff that happened in my life damn near 15 years ago or more. 20 years ago. And my lawyer told me, oh yeah, they can say that, and yes, they will take that into account.
So, at this point, what are the next steps? So you mentioned that you have to sue her, and then after that, then you have to go through and state what you want. I mean, realistically, is there any end in sight for this bullshit, or is this something you're going to have to be dealing with until your son's 18?
Well, the thing is that I'm never, ever, ever going to give up on him, ever.
Yeah.
Like, I will fight until I die.
Thank you for joining us and listening to The Father's Truth. If you would like to be a guest or know someone with a story that needs to be heard, email Alan Donovan now at thefatherstruth@sohomail.com.